Hi, this is David at TED-IELTS, and today I'm going to show you how to improve your IELTS writing score. I know you've probably seen hundreds of web pages and videos that make the same claim, but this video will use real data and genuine examples to show you a method that guarantees continuous progress. If you apply it in the right way, you will one day reach your target score. I will explain all of that in chapters 3 and 4 of this video, but before that, I think it's important to talk about a few other things. First of all, I'm going to explain why IELTS writing is so difficult. It is, of course, important to understand a problem before we tackle it. As always, I've divided this video into chapters. You can jump forward or backwards using the chapter headings below. However, I recommend watching the whole video for the maximum benefit. You can also turn on the subtitles if you're struggling to understand me. Right, let's begin. It's no secret that the writing test is the hardest part of the whole IELTS exam. The vast majority of IELTS candidates struggle more with this part than any other, and this is proven by data on the official IELTS website. Here we can see that the mean score for writing was significantly lower than for any other section. But why is this? In order to do well in any part of the IELTS exam, you need to have good English skills. However, the reading and listening parts only require you to be able to comprehend what others say or write. You don't really need to produce any language, which means that weaknesses in areas like spelling, grammar, punctuation, pronunciation, and so on will only have a minimal impact. When it comes to IELTS writing, however, there are hundreds of things to think about, many of which don't come into play at all in the other parts of the test. For example, your essay must be structured logically. You must link and sequence your ideas in order to satisfy the criteria for coherence and cohesion, which is explained in the video up here. You must have good spelling and word choice, and your grammar skills must be excellent. The words you use must be formal for essays, reports, and some letters, but informal for letters to friends. You must know the difference between words that have very similar meanings and avoid those which were once correct but are now quite archaic. While some of this can be important for IELTS speaking, consider that it is far harder for an examiner to pick up on those small errors in spoken English than it is in an essay, where they can read your sentences over and over to pick apart every little mistake. All of this means that getting a good score is a big challenge for most people. One problem with IELTS that I did not mention in the previous chapter, but which some of you might be shouting at the screen, is the fact that you do not receive any feedback on your IELTS exams. If you're given a band 6.5, no one will tell you why you got that score rather than a band 7. This is something that is nearly impossible to work out for yourself too. Think about it. If you're practicing for the reading or listening tests, you can check your answers against the correct ones. You'll see what questions you got right and what questions you got wrong. With a little bit of effort, you can figure out why you were wrong and thus improve your knowledge and skills. Similarly, when you practice your speaking skills with another person, you can usually tell by their face, by their reaction, whether they understood you or not. Typically, a person's spoken English improves over time through this sort of interaction because the implicit feedback guides them. This is not true, however, of IELTS writing. In fact, practicing every day can cause you more problems because you will simply make the same mistakes again and again until these become bad habits that are almost impossible to break. I've encountered hundreds of students who make the same silly errors repeatedly because no one ever told them that's wrong. The answer, therefore, is to get expert feedback. You need someone who will tell you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. Only in this way can you begin to fix your errors and move towards a higher score. Now let's look at how this is done. I've been teaching IELTS for more than 11 years, and for the past 3 years I've specialized in writing correction. In all that time, I've helped hundreds of candidates score band 7 or higher in the writing test. How it works is this. Firstly, the candidate writes an essay for me. I tell them everything they're doing right and wrong with it, and then give them some advice for improvement. Next, they take this advice, study a little, and then write another essay. This process goes on over and over until the candidate sits their test and gets their desired band score. You might think that their progress would look like this. However, the reality is that it looks more like this. Over the past few months, many of my students have scored band 7 or 8 in the writing test, and all of them followed this pattern. Let's take one of my students as an example. This is a Chinese man called Tony. I worked with Tony over a period of 5 months as he increased his score from 6.5 to 8. In that time, he did around 60 practice essays, which seems like a lot, but the bulk of the work comes not in those essays, but rather in taking the advice I've given him and using it to improve. In the beginning, Tony had some common difficulties. He made about 10 article errors per essay in the first week, and there were various mistakes with prepositions and verb tenses. To begin with, we focused on solving these problems. This takes time and effort because they're big topics, but Tony worked hard in his free time to learn about these specific areas of grammar. I gave him some useful resources to speed up the process, and pretty soon he had gone from about 10 article errors to just 2 or 3 per essay. He was making fewer mistakes with prepositions and verb tenses too. Over time, his grammar improved a lot, and I helped him overcome other issues like spelling mistakes that he would repeatedly make. There were also country-specific problems. In China, many students use set phrases to use in their essays, but examiners really don't like these. Then I showed him how to use more relevant examples, how to expand upon a topic sentence, and how to link 2 paragraphs together logically. Over time, his scores in each section improved, although like most people, his score for grammatical range and accuracy lagged a little behind. Although Tony quickly eliminated the biggest problems from his writing and managed to produce a band 7 essay, he was frustrated that he often still scored 6.5 or even dropped down to a 6. This was sometimes due to an unusual or difficult question, but often it was because he had learned something new and then tried to incorporate it, and this created more errors. However, we kept working together and he kept improving. Eventually, Tony got to the point where he could regularly score band 7 and occasionally 7.5, and from there he improved rapidly so that he could score band 8 and even eventually 8.5. At this stage, improvement was faster because it was a matter of eliminating just small errors. It wasn't about learning anything new, it was just about tweaking and perfecting things. A couple of months ago, Tony took the IELTS exam and scored band 8. He was naturally delighted, but it had not been an easy path. I was very proud of him for having maintained a good attitude and not let little setbacks get him down. Other candidates I have worked with have improved more quickly, and some more slowly. It all depends on their attitudes and approach. Some of them wrote 2 essays every day while others wrote 1 per week. Honestly, it doesn't make a huge difference because the key thing is to take the advice I give you and use it to guide your own studies. It also depends significantly upon what your strengths and weaknesses are. I occasionally work with students, mostly from places where English is commonly spoken, who have amazing language skills, but who just don't understand some key things about IELTS. In that case, they usually experience a rapid improvement after just 1 or 2 essays because all they have to do is learn a couple of basic things. Take Rathvik, for example. Last month he sent me an essay and I gave him a band 5 for it. It had no real paragraphs, no logical progression, and it was written in a very informal style of English. A few days later, after taking on board my advice, Rathvik moved up to a 6.5, and another few days later he scored a band 7. A few more tweaks got him up to a band 7.5, and that's what he got in his actual IELTS test. I'd never seen such fast improvement, but it was not hugely surprising because he had great English skills and only needed to be told some important details about what IELTS essays require. Ultimately, every candidate has different needs and will improve at a different rate. Their progress depends on their starting level, their motivation, their attitude, and the amount of free time they can afford to invest. However, the key thing is that this process works. It ensures continual progress even when it seems like there are small steps backward. As we have seen today, IELTS is a difficult exam and the writing test is far harder than the rest of it. It feels for many people as though it is impossible, but it's not. I've known people who had invested thousands of dollars and unbelievable amounts of time without making any progress. Yet, with the right feedback, all of them eventually reached their goals. Doctors, lawyers, computer programmers, government officials, engineers, nurses, teachers, and people from all walks of life have used this process to achieve what seemed like the impossible. I'm immensely proud of each and every one of them. And if you're interested in joining them, please check out my website, TED-IELTS.com. I'll leave a link in the description down below so that you can find the details of my writing correction service. And for the people who watch this video, there's a 10% discount on the first purchase with the coupon code WELCOME10. I look forward to helping you improve your writing skills and move towards a higher band score.